This is the Scrum Possible podcast, true stories from real people making Scrum possible. I'm Kelly Fide. So Mike Brown, welcome to the podcast, Scrum Become. Glad you're here.
Thanks for having me, Kelly. Appreciate it. Good to see you.
Yeah. So I was laughing the other day after we talked because I was thinking about your story of being a gymnastics coach in addition to being an Agile coach. So maybe we start with the question that I asked you the other day, which is, first off, how did you get into the field? I don't even remember how we got to the coaching part. That'll come up. Let's just start with, so how did you get into the Scrum field in the first place?
I mean, quite honestly, it was somewhat accidentally. I had seen in pretty much a job description for a job with a company, and it was Agile Project Specialist. And I was just like, kind of looking through, and I'm reading through a lot of the items, and it was, something that I had already been doing. I was doing traditional project management, program management. So PMBOK, all that stuff. But we found that the best way to do it was, interactions, with people, the human centricity of it. And when I was reading the JD for, the Agile Project Specialist, because they weren't calling them Scrum Masters, of course, right? It resonated. And it was just, it was one of those funny things where I was like, it just seems like common sense. So went in and, interviewed, and, I got the job, and probably within the first month I was sent to Scrum Master training, and Scrum Master training, I was like, this makes sense. This is cool. And then it's just okay, looking at it through the lens of the projects that I'd been working on before. I was in state and government space, and then just, it's okay, we're doing things iteratively. Let's learn from the past mistakes so they don't become legacy problems. It really made sense. And we always hear within the industry, it's a mindset, and it actually is. It's, trying to iteratively, continually improve. And, we're human. So we're not going to be successful 1000% of the time. We're going to fail, but it's failure's okay. Just learn from that failure to try and mitigate not doing the same thing, over and over and over again. So it really resonated, and ended up starting, Scrum Mastering with, a bunch of teams for an online learning corporation. While we were there, I ended up going through a safe transformation. So got pretty much every flavor of Agile, Scrum, Kanban. It started looking into DAD and less, and all those good things. And it was just it's hey, you're bringing the best elements of being able to effectively get work done while also improving the value of those that are actually doing it. So it's just, again, to me, it's really commonsensical. And it's funny when it's just it's funny to me when Agile gets overcomplicated. So it's just, trying to keep it as basically simplistic as possible is good for me, because, I'm not that smart. But again, I always looked at it through the lens of it's common sense. So yeah, it's just, it was one of those things. It just, kind of fell into it, but then realizing that I'd been Agile pretty much all along. It's we're Agile in our everyday lives, and it's being able to explain it and make that correlation to, hey, it can work in business. And that's I've been wowed how it's actually expanded, where, it started with a bunch of engineers in Snowbird in 2001, right? And it's it's not just engineering, it's in HR, it's in sales, it's in, so many other aspects, and, you've got human-centric design, and there's so much about just kind of taking the Agile mindset and being able to apply it, that it makes sense. And again, going back to the common sense piece, it's just, it feels right. And if you can see your day to day, it's over the weekend, you're doing little things. You're hey, what's my capacity? What's my commitment? It's ooh, I did that project last weekend. That didn't work out that well. So you did a mini retrospective, and it's okay, hey, and then, hey, I need to start a home improvement project. I'm going to need these tools. So you're doing you're kind of refining, seeing what you need to do. Do I need to call an electrician? So there's that correlation that I love. And it's not just that, it's like you go to work, you're agile, and then you're done. It's just, again, it's really, really kind of transferring that whole mindset into everything you do. And, I'm a big fan of the stickies. So it just keeps my life organized.
Oh, I hear you there. And if you think back to some of your very first moments, you said it really resonated with you. What was it about Agile that really resonated with you personally?
I really enjoy the team dynamic. I think it's brilliant in the fact that you can pull together, like, let's say you have like a traditional delivery team. You have people that are introverted, you have people that are extroverted, you have people that love sports, people that hate sports, people that love online gaming, people that hate online gaming. And the expectation is like, you're going to bring these people together and they're going to be delivering this awesome product, right? But it's being able to build those teams and getting, like, understanding the motivations, the interests of the folks. Like, you and I have talked about this, the WIFM, what's in it for me, right? And getting it, watching people build and grow as they're building and, growing a business and building and growing, like, lines of code for, some product that's being delivered. That's cool. And that's like watching that light bulb moment and watching, like, engineers or QC or folks just starting to come out of their shells and educating and like having conversations and, like, kind of like reaching across the board. It's watching a team growing in among themselves and then being able to grow with other teams. I just love that dynamic and watching those light bulb moments where folks are starting to understand why they're working on something. That's the motivation. And it's like explaining, okay, old example from my past is we're doing online learning. There's some students with disabilities that aren't able to go to a traditional brick and mortar school, and hearing the stories from them and like engaging with the teams and working with the teams and watching the team's reaction of like, you know what, this makes a lot more sense as to why we're building this, why we're building this. And that's like, we're building it as a team because we're part of this company that's building this to provide this excellent product. And, it's like, it's really putting that motivation, putting that, that passion into it. And it's also watching humans collaborate and grow together. It's team, it's like, coaching doesn't have to be on a sports field. It's, within and amongst every conversation that we have. I think, every conversation is a chance to learn and also a chance to educate. So it's just, it's fun. It's like, it doesn't have to be like a heads down. We're just, all miserable. Just, well, we got to refine, plan, retro, do our system. No, it's like, okay, hey, look what we were able to do. This is really cool. Look what we discovered while we were doing it, and just, it's really finding the passion and just like showing, folks on teams and humans just, how awesome they are. So I enjoy it.
Wow, I feel inspired hearing you say that. And I'm also thinking how in your personal life, you're also a coach. I think an elite gymnastics coach for your daughter's team. Is that right?
Yeah, I wouldn't go as high as elite, but we're competitive. So yeah. Yeah, so my daughter's an optional gymnast. She's a level 7, within USAG. So she, like her and her team, they get to pick their own floor music. They have input into their routines, which is great. And I take what we do at work and I apply it in the gym, and I take what I do in the gym and I apply it at work. Everything is iterative. You are not going to go out and be able to hit like a highly technical, difficult skill the first time, right? But you've got building blocks that you're working from. And I always look at it, it's like, okay, building block for like a round off back handspring, just layout or something like that. It's like, okay, how's your round off? How's your back handspring? Okay, like we put those two together, then you put in a third element into it. It's just like going into, it's like, well, we want you to build this. It's like, okay, well, why? Let's start breaking that down. And everything is iterative. And it's like, you're not going to deliver the biggest, best thing in one fell swoop. It's not a big reveal, right? And that's like, you don't wait until a meet to be like, hey, I'm going to try this skill. You're working on it iteratively. Those practices are, going through like, the iterative patterns that we do. There's a lot of failure, but it's like, okay, well, why did we fail? Well, when I set, I twisted a little bit further. My arms were bent. I was really loose. Okay. Again, that iterative learning and being able to come through like functionally, like thinking through thinking about, and then like thinking forward. So it's like, what are we learning, from these pieces? And that's always retrospectives. We do retrospectives at our gym. It's like, hey, best thing about the week, and what is something that you want to improve on, right? Or like at the end of the night, we do that as well. It's like, hey, what was the best thing about it? It's like, oh, I did this, and like also at some time it's like, oh no, the whole practice was horrible. It's like, well, I saw you do this. So it's like, celebrate the wins, even the little ones. The little ones mean just as much as the big ones, because you put those together, you get a big one. So it's really, again, it's that mindset. And, I always laugh because it's like what I'm doing on the day to day, I'm doing there. And then there's some things I'll hear some of the coaches. I work with brilliant coaches at work. I work with brilliant coaches in the gym. I'll hear folks in the gym, they're saying something. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I need to write that down because I want to use that on Monday. so I'm just like constantly learning.
So what's an example of something you heard in the gym that you applied in your Agile job?
Oh, gosh. One of the best things I've heard is just because you're having a bad day doesn't mean you can support somebody to make their day better. And that's just, I thought that was really cool because we're human, right? And if we come in and we're like, it's understanding that we are working with other humans. We need to put the shoes on, we need to put their shoes on our feet. And it was just like, look, we're not going to have the best days, right? It's like, we don't, you don't need to be on camera, right? You don't need to, be muted, but you still do need to like be present. And if you've got a good team, that team can support you. And it's just like, if you've got that outreach, be like, hey, reach out to somebody and be like, hey, look, this is going on in my personal life. I just got this. And be like, hey, take the day. It's like, well, I can't because I got this. Okay, cool. Let me pull this off your plate. What you can do instead of having to speak through this, you share, I'll speak, and it's being able to show that like collaborative piece. And it's like, but you have to kind of break that barrier of, do I trust the people on my team? If you've got a good team that's self-organized and you've got that trust, that's easy. And it's a team dynamic. So I think that was one of the biggest things where it's like, just because you're not having a bad day. And that's the thing, is like, if you want to just stay there and, be woe is me. And I hate to say anything like that, but it's like, you're probably going to help yourself out by, continuing to engage with your teammates and, being there and being present because you are part of the team. And that's the thing, is that each individual has a voice, each individual matters. And, I think that's one of the biggest things, is that support element is huge. And that support element is also, as a team, we win. As a team, we fail. And as a team, we learn. And I think that was one of the key things. And that's just understanding that human nature is human nature. We are not going to be 100% every day, but if we have a good team, we can support each other so that we can get as close as we can. Right. And I just love the fact that, again, gymnastics is an individual team sport. As an individual, you are there competing on, bars, beam, vault and floor individually, but your team is there. And they are the loudest voice in the gym. They're the people rooting you on, and they also they are your support element. They're the ones helping you get psyched up, and then you've got like that team score. But it is your individual score, but you're part of that team, and that's how I always look at our engineering and delivery teams. It's a bunch of individuals that you're bringing together for a common cause, and that's, to me, that's cool and that's brilliant. But as they self-organize and they grow bigger and bigger and bigger, then you've got this great area of, hey, Kelly, I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks. I'm actually going on vacation. You're like, cool. All right, let's sit down for 13 minutes and we'll walk through what are some of the things that you need me to take you off your plate. That way you don't have to look at your phone. You don't have to have your laptop or anything like that. We can support each other, right? Gives the predictability. Hey, we talked to, the product, side, and, we've got a bunch of people that are going to be out before the holidays. So we're going to dip our capacity down. We might do some ideation and discovery. They're on board with it because we're giving them 2 months notice. And that's that support piece. So again, it all kind of like comes together in this, fantastical, weird meld of, just using common sense, again, treating others as you want to be treated.
Wow. Can I be on your team? Oh, wait, we're already on the team.
Go ahead. You're always on my team.
Likewise. And I think that's another thing that stood out to me when I got into Agile as well. It's like I started my career in academia and I was really scared to get into corporate because I had this stereotype of it's sort of dog eat dog and it's a dangerous world out there, and I'm not going to survive it. Plus, I'm an introvert, believe it or not, even though I like to flap my lips. And it's once I got into Agile, it's like, oh, it's the opposite. You have a support system around you, and you are part of a support system, and you're there to actually help each other succeed together. And what you said reminds me of a gymnast from the UCLA team. Her name is Caitlin.
Ohashi.
Yes. Oh
Yep.
my gosh, what an athlete. And I remember she got all this flack for various things, I think gaining weight, and I don't even know what else. And she was doing a floor routine, and she did this, I don't even know, triple flip, whatever. I'm sure you would know exactly what it was. And I was watching her on YouTube. This is like one of those moments when your brain's just tired, so you're just watching stuff you like. In my case, I love watching gymnastics. And I was watching her, but as she executed that successfully, I heard this scream from the sidelines, and it was like 15 of her teammates right there, and the camera swung over, and they were like, yes. And I realized in that moment, she's not alone. Like, she's really supported by her team. And I think that's what I hear you saying about Agile.
Absolutely. And that's, again, we want that team dynamic, and, that's the key. And, teams are there, they're built, they're constructed, we're looking for teams to deliver, consistently, on cadence, all the buzzwords and everything. But for that to happen, you need to build a good team. And, we need the team to understand the what, the why, the when. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? When is it due by? They need to be transparent with each other. They need to trust each other. So that those, and like, just for human beings, those are a lot of expectations, right? That takes years for some areas. And like, in some businesses, it's like, no, we want you all to do that get going in the next month. Your foreman phase starts now, and, you need to be rolling. And I think that's just, that goes to show that, everybody that I've worked with, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And watching folks, not necessarily come out of their shells, but be comfortable with, I do know this. And having their teammates be like, you do know this. Cool. Let's see what you can do. And that's like my favorite thing as a Scrum Master is watching, teammates be promoted. And also at the same time, as bad as this sounds, is watching teammates go to other companies as businesses because they were heavily recruiting, like, hey, you were able to do this. I'm like, yeah, you're awesome. Go and do this. And that's, just kind of like the successful aspect of it, and watching like the teammates be happy for them, not like, oh, you're abandoning us. You get that, but it's happiness for the success because of what, folks have been able to, like, teach each other and learn from each other. And, it's a good basis of just, human dynamic, which is cool. And again, it's like this little microcosm of excellence in these little spots. And it's just, it's exciting. I just, again, love the light bulb moments when, everything works. And also at the same time, failures are pretty awesome as well, because that is a great learning opportunity for everybody. And it's just like, all right, it wasn't just Mike's fault. I mean, usually it is, but it wasn't just Mike's fault,
No.
Maybe we could have done this. So guess what? Next sprint, we're going to do this way. The next PI planning, we're actually going to bring this in with some of the teams that we've got dependencies on, some of the areas, we ran into this issue. Let's identify this as a risk now, not wait. It's being transparent, being communicative, and trusting each other, I think, is one of the key elements for, a successful team. And that works in regular life as well, being honest, being trustworthy, being transparent. It translates really well across the board.
It really does. I think for me, doing Agile has made me into a better human. What about you?
I think so. And it gives you the opportunity to, progressively learn as you're doing just like kind of the day to day. Like I said this the other day, I was like, let's stop kicking the ice cubes under the fridge, right? It's like, it's a lot easier to kick that ice cube. You fill your water cup up and the ice cube falls down. And you're like, Fine. And you go to pick it up, and picking it up is a pain, right? It's slippery. You can't get a good grip on it. You have to grab a paper towel. It's a lot of work. But also at the same time, it's like if we're not picking up that ice cube, it's going under the fridge. What's under the fridge? The floor.
Bad things, I'm sure.
So it's eventually going to melt. So it's being able to, address things quickly. And I think that's kind of like the agile mindset is what it is we're not kicking the ice cube under the fridge. We're picking it up and we're putting it in the sink and, wiping off the floor. We're addressing, hey, it fell. Okay, cool. We're going to have that fast turnaround time and let's go. So not a great analogy, but.
Oh, I was just thinking it's a great metaphor actually, because, if you try to pick it up, it slides around. It's annoying. And so what I was going to ask you is, a lot of the people that I mentor who want to get into Scrum Mastering, they take a training like from Scrum Alliance or wherever. They get certified and then they're like, great, now I'm going to apply online and I'm going to get a job. And then they don't get a call back and they don't know why. And it's because for various reasons, learning to be a Scrum Master is more like learning to speak Italian and less like learning how to ride a bike. But also it's like a catch-22, even entry-level Scrum Master positions want you to have experience as a Scrum Master. So how do you even get that experience in the first place? So what would you say to someone who's trying to solve that catch-22?
Well, Joseph Heller, I love his book, so Catch-22, good reference. I think Scrum Mastering is much less about how adept you are in Jira or quoting the Agile Manifesto, and it's more about how you interact with people. It's the human centricity of it. How observant are you? Can you read a room? What's your situational awareness? I think, honestly, there's a lot of people out there, maybe they just got their CSM and like just, sit down, like kind of do like a mini retrospective on yourself. And they're going to realize, what, I'm Scrum Mastering my day to day already. Again, like what we were talking about before, like what's my capacity? Have I done this before? If I've done this before, then doing it again should be a little bit easier because I had those learnings. Have I learned how to do it, better? Again, I always look at, again, from the team dynamic, perspective. Have you been on a team? And that's the thing is if you've been on an athletic team, if you've been in a band, if you've been part of a play, you've been on stage, you've been part of, if you've been doing that, you've been working with other actors, you've been working with, the stage crew, you've been on a team, you've been working with coaches, you've been working. So you understand those elements, those dynamics. And, I think, from an experience standpoint, yeah, maybe you don't have those years of like in place, traditional Scrum Mastering, but I think, it's the confidence in, hey, I know what, the expectations are of a Scrum Master role, but also understanding that part of being agile is being agile, right? Like this, and there's millions of books. What's written in one book is not going to work for every situation. So it's kind of like you just kind of like, molding that clay to what's going to work for you and what your approach is. But my recommendation always is, take the human skills, use those first. Those are going to help influence any of the technical skills. And even if you're working with like highly technical people, they're highly technical people. It's people. And people are the most complex computer machine on the face of the earth. The human brain is, right? So I think the human aspect, a lot of people forget, or it's like, you're helping to manage a project a little bit differently than a traditional, PMO would. But you're working with the people. And again, I think it's just, taking a look at, your interactions, knowing who's on the team. I always used to work with my Scrum Masters. It's like, we should know, like simple things like, like, hey, is everybody local? Where's everybody located at? What's going on in, the team's lives that you can just figure out like on your own, and how can you be supportive of them? So it's more humanistic to me than it is from an actual like JD role. Because if you've got somebody that's able to be a coach, a mentor, an enabler, as well as like a confidant, like, hey, do you have a minute? Let's take a walk around the building. And, just you have one of those conversations. Then it's just like, all right, everybody, like, we good? Yeah, I just had an event. Cool. All right. Well, if you need to talk again, let's do it. It's those little things that I think, people forget when they're looking at like some of the roles where it's like, it's got like this, and this. And it's like, yeah, and that probably changes on a daily basis. So, be comfortable in your skill sets, but be more confident in just like, what are your human interactions? And again, I think it's, observations, getting out of firefighting. Like I always like to say, fire education. Let's remove the oily rags from a sparking outlet. Let's get rid of the wire that's got, it's all of the, it's all frayed and everything along those lines. Some of those elements from a Scrum Master role is being predictive, and a lot from a Scrum Master side is you're doing things, and you're not going to get the rah, thanks for doing that, because people may not be aware of it because it's taken care of. You've gotten ahead of it. You've squared it away. You've set up the relationships, the collaborations, with other teams, whether it's with architecture or UX or CX. It's a lot of, engagement and involvement, really understanding the motivations and interests of others. So it's a long stroll through, HCD pretty much, human-centered design. So I think for a Scrum Master that's just, getting started out, look back on all the stuff that you've done and you'll realize that I've already been doing this. I just haven't done it in this corporate setting. But take what you've done and what you've learned and bring it into it, and see what's worked. And if you've got some things that haven't worked, don't bring them. So it's just yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people tell me, gosh, I want to do a career switch from a non-technical background. How can I even think about the Scrum Master job? And I tell them it's not a technical role. It helps to understand certain pieces at a basic level, but it's not a technical role. And they just look at me unconvinced. So what would you say to that question?
I would say being technical or non-technical doesn't really matter. Should we understand the basics of what's going on? Absolutely. But technical goes both ways, right? You may have to be a conduit to be able to explain, something highly technical, and like, we always hear at a high level, this is okay, but we need to make information consumable. And, that's one of the things, like I would joke around with my teams. I'm like, all right, that's great, but explain it to me so that I understand it. Like and that was the thing, is like, we used to start writing stories that, Mike, so we write it so that Mike can understand it. And I was like, that's good, because guess what? If our product or business team is going in, they need to understand, how this is tied into, what's transferring. So, from a technical perspective, that's, if someone's like highly technical and comes in, that's great. But always remember that we need to make sure that what we are doing is deliverable. Like that elevator pitch. You get into the elevator with your CEO. They're like, hey, what do you do? What are you working on? We can't go all the way down into the weeds. First off, it should be a short elevator trip. But second off, it's just being like, okay, your audience, being able to explain it and being them like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds great. That's awesome. I might be, on site, next week. I'll pop in and see you guys. Cool. Awesome. But I don't think, I always see like, technical Scrum Master is like, okay, but you still need to work with a team, and it's a team of human beings. So, don't ever lose the human centricity of what we're doing. But I don't think that, I don't think anybody needs to be like 1000% like, yeah, they've got it. They've got, all of the certifications in what the technology is that they're working in. Again, understand enough to know if, there's being able to observe if something's wrong, or if some of the transparency is starting to lag. But it's the human centric aspect of it. So I think folks are, if you've got a good, building block with your team, then it shouldn't really be an issue. And then being able also to like, explain it upwards to somebody that's really technical. that's great. But being able to bring it both ways is, again, kind of being that conduit of providing a little bit of common sense and providing that context. The context is key.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds me of this guy I used to work with who went to a different company. He had a better opportunity, and he was the manager of 3 different analytics teams. And I was an Agile coach at the time with that company. And so, so Ted, one of my colleagues, said, "Hey, he left. Can you please be the interim manager and Scrum Master of these analytics teams?" So I said, "Sure," but I was nervous because these are highly technical people. Half of them with PhDs in data science, and I have a PhD, but I kind of feel like sometimes maybe that doesn't count because it's in philosophy. It counts. It counts. I worked for it for many years, and I'm glad I did it. But I'm like, how can I ever understand enough about what they're doing to support them? And I thought, oh wait, I can just ask them, like, because we're all humans together. So I asked them questions in some of our group meetings, and then I said, hey, I want to understand more about what you do so I can support you. Can I set up a one-on-one? And they're like, okay, sure. So I set up one-on-ones, and then I got into the one-on-ones, and I said, and they were all remote. We were all remote. So I said, okay, can you share your screen and show me what you're doing? And they're like, no. And I said, what do you mean no? And I realized they were being nice about it. And one guy said, like, very gently, you won't understand. And I'm like, oh, I know I won't understand, but can you just kind of give me the lay of the land? And he's like, no. Please, I'm genuine. He didn't believe me, I think is what was going on. I said, I'm genuinely curious to understand what goes on, behind the curtain. And so he said, okay. And so he started talking me through, like, and he said, okay, this thing controls this chart. Because it was analytics, so graphs, pretty graphs. We all like pretty graphs. And this thing makes this other graph. And so then I started asking questions because I said, okay, I asked 3 times, so I want to show I'm appreciative. So I said, okay, so what does this thing do? And he said, oh, well, I'm glad you asked. And so then he kind of got into it. And then the word got around the team, like, she actually is interested. She actually is curious to learn. And I think that kind of confirms what you're saying about we're all just humans together. So if you're feeling overwhelmed or intimidated, just stop right there and just take a breath and realize that we're here to support each other in Agile anyway.
And that's sometimes the Scrum Master role isn't necessarily understood, and it's like, oh, you're here to do this, and she's like, no, I'm actually really, really interested. And then it's, you go into like one of my favorite questions. It's like, okay, so you guys did that, like, why? What was and that's the thing is, like, why, depending on the delivery, can be like, accusatory, or it can be like, why? Explain it to me, because that seems really awesome. Like, what? How did we get to that spot? And then, like, I love for people to tell the origin story, right? It's like, well, like, hey, so this started here, and then we moved to this, then we moved to this, and then we had to go back, and then we moved, and now the reason that we're doing this, and I'm like, okay, and then you can see like that life kind of come back into it. And again, that's the motivation, right? And again, like, you showed that interest, and they went from being kind of the to, okay, all right, we can relax our arms and and appreciate what you're doing. So that's awesome.
So what's your origin story, kind of as a human now working in Agile? Like, does it still resonate with you today? And how does it help you be a better human?
I think where I'm at currently, I'm learning something new every day. And it's also always interesting because you hear about like agile transformations and safe transformations, and you've been doing like a lot of the organizational change management, and that's the thing is, it's like, where does change start, Kelly? Like, where does it start? And I think that's one of the biggest things that like sometimes keeps getting missed, is like, it's that individual piece. And understanding that there's so many people that are involved in something, and it's like, well, we've got a map. It's like, okay, that's great, but like, what is the understanding on the map? And I think for my origin, working with people and being really driven by the team dynamics, is there's teams all over the place. There's executive teams, right? There's management teams. There's, president and vice presidential teams in different companies. And that's like looking at it through that lens of like, okay, are those groups working as like functional teams? And like, sometimes you've got silos, and it's like, well, if we're really all going to be transforming, new word, transforming, like, do we understand the what, the why, the when together? And that's, I think for me, it's just like taking even like the most basic, hey, we're going to build a brand new delivery team. Great. Hey, we're going to do like an epic core team, for a PI or something. Okay. You start off the same way. It's like you're working with the people, you're understanding the motivations and interests. Do we understand what we're working on? Do we understand why we're working on it? Right. Getting those elements out of the way. It's like, hey, does everybody here know each other? All right, let's get into getting some introductions. A team working agreement. Team working agreement shouldn't be 90-page PowerPoint. It should be a one-sheeter where it's like, hey, this is how we're going to be nice. Like, it's not even how we're going to be nice, but it's just like, here's our expectations of each other and our expectations of ourselves. So yeah, and I think it continually drives down to just keep it simple. Like the 10th principle, right? It's the art of simplicity. Maximize the amount of work not being done. Because everybody's chasing their tails. Everybody's moving a million miles an hour, but we can do it better. And I think that's the biggest thing with Agile is, yeah, we can do it better, and we can do it better each and every time. Like, we can make it more better, and like that's the thing. It's just it's an incremental improvement, and that's the continuous learning. That's continuous improvement, and that's what really drives me, is being able to watch that. And like, I love seeing when just you've got teams that are just like, boom, they've got it. And then when they start to educate other teams, or they start to you'll see them doing something, and you'll hear something in like a whole other conversation, not even related. And like, Kelly's like, hey, the systems team, they did this thing last week and it was awesome. And I'm like, they're rocking it. Right. And they've got it. And then honestly, making sure that feedback comes back, because that's one of the biggest things is feedback, from, are we providing the correct, deliverable for the client and customer, but the feedback to the teams is huge. And that's, it doesn't all have to be sunshine and lollipops, but it's like, hey, this, okay, great. But it was fast. We got it within a day's time. We were able to take a look at it. We can make the course correction. Okay. We've worked with everybody. We've got that transparency. We're communicating. We can adjust. Right. And it's not, 3 months after the fact, and hey, something happened with that thing. And everybody's like, I don't remember what you're talking about. But I always just go back to that, the dynamic of the teams does not end, just with like the delivery teams. It's like, you've got teams like you've got product ownership teams, you've got product management teams. And it's just like being able for those groups to operate as a team, be supportive of each other, whether they're in a COE or a LACE or something like that. It's, simple little things, lean coffees, lean teas, brown bag lunches, they're awesome. And it doesn't have to be like, it doesn't need to be recorded. We don't have to have notes from it. It could just be a conversation. You could send out an invite to 300 people, and if one person shows up, that's a conversation. It's an invitation to the conversation. And it's just, to me, it's just like anytime you can go in, like I've done COPs. I've had one person show, and I learned more from that person about like some different things that I was just like, that was awesome. And they're like, well, I don't feel like you really were able to. I was like, no, that was great. But I think that's, again, it's that mindset. It's really, really kind of, promoting and, embracing, a little bit of an agile mindset. And it's, understanding that there's always going to be a lot of moving pieces. Let's try and understand them. And, that way we can help improve.
And there's some things we'll never understand, but we can work together to try to herd the cats.
Exactly. And we can be comfortable with that, right? We're not going to know all the things. So
no, it's impossible. I mean, welcome to life. If you're breathing, we're all generally having that experience. And it makes me think of something from, I guess, a principle of lean coffee, which is a way of, I guess, getting together in Agile. And how does it go? Something like whoever's there are the right people to be there.
Yep.
Whatever the topic is the right topic for the day. Something like that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely along those lines. And yeah, that's, that I think that's perfect in what it is. It's like, hey, we're here. It's our start time. Let's go.
Yeah, let's do this. I think that's a song, actually. So I was also curious to ask you, what do you know today that you wish you would have known when you first got started in Scrum?
I would definitely like to understand that Agile isn't only within engineering, right? That was like one of the biggest things is like, that was like, I think I went for probably a year, with just, it's a development, it's development, it's development. And then, understanding that, no, there's a lot of other areas within businesses that and that's the thing, it doesn't have to be a full scale, like, we're not going to transform the HR department, but we've heard these are some of the issues that you're having, how about we try something along the lines of, a daily stand-up. That's not a status meeting, right? Like, no, just, hey, just, like, what are the impediments that we're running into today? Things along those lines. I think that's one of the biggest things, just understanding that, yeah, they're like, Agile works everywhere. I mean, just pure and simple.
It totally does. I used Agile, actually I used a form of Agile that called Kanban to paint my living room, because I thought, oh, I'll paint my living room, no big deal. Well, I'm a not a good painter, I discovered. And then I realized, well, I need better colors and I need someone to help me with that. And oh, wait, now I want to take out this wall. Like, it turned into a whole thing. So before I knew it, I had a team of 4 people coming in every day for like 3 weeks. And we had a Kanban board up on the wall of backlog and then to do, doing, done. And they hated me for the first 2 days. But after that, they liked it because they knew exactly what was happening that day. They were able to tell me, impediments like, Kelly, you shouldn't have painted those 3 sample colors on the wall. And I'm like, but I wanted to see. And they're like, well, now we have to do 3 extra coats. Okay, well, now I know for the other walls. So just having that conversation versus unpleasant forms of back and forth was so much better.
That's awesome. That's funny. It's like, I think everybody's like, when you think about it, you're like, okay, actually, I'm doing things like you said, you're in a Kanban fashion, or from like an Agile mindset. And again, it's part of being Agile is being Agile, right? It like certain like approaches that again may work in a book or in an online training may not be applicable to what's happening, but if you kind of educate the mindset, for yourself and like those that you're working with, you're going to be able to, make the positive incremental changes that you want to. But I think, that those are the 2 things on my end. It's just that it's not only within, engineering. And also it's just, kind of, really, really adapting and adopting the mindset to, it's, not doing, but being Agile. That's the old quote, right? It's like, you want to be, not just do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's the difference in your mind between doing and being?
I think doing is, look at our calendar. We've got a stand up every day. It takes an hour and a half and it's a status meeting. We've got planning and we skip the retrospective. Like probably we do one like once every 6 months. It's having all the ceremonies on the calendar, but not improving them. And like for like being is, we had stand-ups every day. We capped them at the 15-minute mark, time boxed. But after like 3 months, we realized, what? We were in good sync. So we adjusted to Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We just used like our, regular Teams channel, or our, link or, Slack channel to, communicate. As we're going through, we actually decided that, the most important aspects are refinement and retrospectives, because if you refine well and you retrospect well, then planning will be easy. So we actually dropped down our planning time, increased our refinement time, and, like made sure we were hitting the retros and people were being honest and transparent. to me, that's the being. It's like where you're taking some of like the original constructs and you're adjusting them to what's going to work better for the team. So I think that's the big difference between like, just doing where, you've got, look at our product backlog. We have 8,000 stories in there that nobody knows what they're for, and they're like 2 words or 1 line. And so it's, that's the definitive difference, that to me at least. So I probably not for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, and the obvious answer is, for me anyway, is I would much rather be than do. Well, of course I want to do, but I want my doing to be guided by my being. I think it comes back to what you were saying about the importance of just being human and taking a human approach. And it actually reminds me of a very funny management book called Managing Humans. And I just love that title. And it's for people in technical environments who have been promoted now to be a manager. And it's like, okay, you used to work with machines, but now you're managing humans. Oh no, what do you do now? So,
That's
so
awesome.
before we close out, like any final thoughts that you feel would be helpful for people to keep in mind as they're exploring a career transition into Scrum?
I think, within Scrum and Agile, again, that a lot of the basic tenets have been around for a really long time. But the cool thing about it is that, don't be afraid of something new, because like the whole purpose for like Scrum and Agile is like, that's the continual learning, right? So if there's ways that, can be adjusted, or if things are like coming through, it's again, part of being Agile is being Agile, right? And that's, like Scaled Agile Framework, for 6, they made a lot of adjustments, with, their approach, because they started to hear some of the feedback. And like, honestly, I think it's a little bit more consumable, but, there's like, as Agilists, as we're moving forward, there's going to be some things you're going to be like, that is the kookiest idea on the face of the earth. Maybe I'll try it, right? And that's the thing, is it doesn't, things don't need to be tested out by, like Jeff Sutherland or Mike Cohn or, Dean Leffingwell, or it can be tested out by insert name here, that's a Scrum Master. Be like, hey, we're going to try this because we're going to experiment. And guess what? If it fails, we won't ever do it again. But let's try and see. And like, we've got that short time base on it. See if it works. And if it doesn't, cool. And that, obviously you're working with the team. So it's like, hey, what do y'all think? And if they're like, yeah, let's try it. All right, let's do it. Go back, continue to learn from it. So it's just, as Agile continues to transform, there's going to be different like thought processes. There's going to be different approaches. There's going to be probably, variations and transitions to like the normal set, that's an established, like in the establishment now. But, be comfortable with being uncomfortable and try things. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's just, feel free, like experiment and help other people. Be like, hey, we're going to run an experiment this sprint. Just letting you know. Want us to keep you involved? Yeah. Okay, good. Come along for the ride.
I love that. It kind of takes the pressure off.
Yeah. And you might come up with some of these awesome, everybody loves a hackathon. Like you can do like mini hackathons in, each sprint from a, an experimentation standpoint. And that's, working with your product owner, your product group, working with the team, just like, hey, we've got some of these areas, especially for some innovative areas, it's like, that's kind of what, they get to do, which is fun, but it's like taking that mentality and, just like, hey, let's try.
Let's just see what happens and then learn from it. So thank you so much, Mike. I have so enjoyed this conversation, and including learning a little bit more about not only your background, but your mindset and your perspective. And I think you're a model of the very first value in Agile and Lean, which is respect for people with your human-centric approach. So I really appreciate you being a guest on the podcast.
Awesome. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast, and I really do appreciate it. And I love the fact that you're doing this. And yeah, this was a lot of fun. So thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me today on Scrum Possible. I appreciate you being part of our community. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to stay updated. Your support means a lot and helps others find me. Don't forget to leave a review if you can. Your feedback is really valuable. And please do share my podcast with your friends. And remember, there's a whole library of past episodes with more content you'll love. I look forward to having you with me next time. Until then, stay curious and keep listening. I'm Kelly Fide.